It's a weird node design. It's if I were a betting man, which I'm not, I don't gamble. But if I was, when this beta ends, this skill will not be the same as it is right now at launch. I promise you this will change, because in its current state, it's awful. Good morning, good evening, or good night, folks. I am your host, Simon Redhanded. Welcome back to Gaming Redhanded. As you can see, we are a couple hours away from the early access being available. I tried to get my download on, and then the entire website went down. It seems like it's sporadically back up, but neither here nor there. I'm not worried about it. My internet speed is quite reliable, so I guess when the time comes, I will get this game downloaded. For now, what I decided to do is what everybody else is doing, really, is just talk about my plans for early access start. But like I said before in my last video, I will be doing a cinematic playthrough. And what I mean by that is basically I'm going to be going through the storyline, be talking about the game, kind of from like a little, I would say more of an RP perspective. I'm going to be trying to put together the story of the game and keep it nice, keep the edits tight, make sure that if you wanted to watch it like a long running through movie, I would say that's the way to do it. That's the goal anyway. But however, while I'm doing that, I will be having to pick a class in order to do that run through with. And I've been thinking about how I want to do my first character in League start, and what comes to mind is some sort of minion build. However, as you guys recognize, there is no direct obvious minion ascendancy in the game, and that's by design. In one of the interviews with Jonathan Rogers, he said that they didn't want people to feel like they had to pick this specific ascendancy or minions, so they didn't make a necromancer like they did in PoE 1. I decided that I would go through, look at all the ascendancies, and pick a class that would best suit the playstyle I'm looking for. And what I'm looking for in this first playthrough of Path of Exile is a melee-based character who's also a summoner who can fight alongside the minions if that's possible in this game. And if it's not, I'll have to adjust on the fly. And what I mean by is usually summoners, they play that back role where they just kind of send their minions forward and they kind of watch from the back lines. That's not what I'm trying to do. I want to fight in tandem with the minions and get that experience as if I'm basically jumping bosses, jumping hard enemies, jumping monsters. Like, you know, I want to go through raid classes if I'm playing Jujutsu Kaisen. So I've been going through this blind. I have not been looking up any spoilers. I haven't looked up any gems and supports and stuff like that. If it wasn't officially shared by GGG, I pretty much didn't go out of my way to look at it. And that's because I wanted to go in here as blind as possible and kind of organically build my character. I have faith in my abilities to understand how skill gems work, how to put together a skill, how to put together a build, how to use the ascendancies, how to not completely brick myself on the way in there. So I'm quite confident that even if I decide to do something unorthodox, such as a melee summoner, that I'll be able to navigate the hurdles that might come up and fix it along the way. Because of that, I might, you know, talk about some theories I might have, and people might be like, oh, we've seen some spoilers, I understand that you can't do this or you can do that. I just know from now, I don't care. I'm going to try doing it anyway, and if it doesn't work, I will fail splendidly on my own. But that's it. The 4 ascendancies that I'm looking at that I feel would work out for what I'm looking for are the Gemling Legionnaire, the first thing that came to mind after reading what they offer in their skills. Infernalist, though I don't like the specificity of this ascendancy, but I know it's the minion ascendancy, and I took a look at it also, and I think that it might be something I have to consider. The Warbringer, right? And that's because of the ancestral spirit totems. This actually might be the closest to what I'm looking for, but that all depends on how far I can go in with these ancestral spirits, and the reality is I won't be able to test that at all until I get in game. And then the last one is actually might be one that most people aren't even looking at, is the Invoker. The Invoker has a few talents here that I am interested in, and I think that it might be beneficial for a minion player. But we'll go through the trees, and then I'll try to, you know, show you guys where my head is at. So let's start with the Gemling Legionnaire. If there's to be a jack of all trades, it feels like not even just a good starting ascendancy for minions. I think it's a good starting ascendancies for new players to the game in general. I think there's a lot of things here that it would minimize your chances of bricking yourself on this thing. Everything in here you can find a use for. Even if you start with a skill gem that you don't like, this ascendancy is so freeform and so open that you could probably change to any skill you want, And as long as you're willing to read path on the ascendancy tree, you can probably make anything work with this class. And that's because everything it's doing is fairly generic. When it comes to minions, there's a few key stats, because minions can't really draw from anything unless it specifically says your minions or allies. For the most part, it doesn't affect your minions. So when it comes to minions, what's important to them from PoE 1, I don't know if this rule remains the same in PoE 2, but only thing you can go off of is that's probably what we need to go by. And that is, minions really like having gem levels. They like having quality on the gems itself. They need access to certain supports, and of course some of the gems and minions are going to have some very high attribute costs. And I look at the Gem Engineer, and I think this class can kind of address all the issues you're looking at, starting with number 2 here, which is implanted gems, which is +1 level to all skill gems. Look at how you built minions in PoE 1. It was hitting thresholds, right? Level 21 gem, level 25 gem, level 31 gem. You were always trying to hit those gem level thresholds. I can't imagine that's still not a thing in PoE 2. And even if it is not, when you look through all the other ascendancy trees there's nothing that really is minion specific, even in the class that people are assuming is the minion class, besides gem levels. So gem levels, to me, I think 100% will be the most important stat for minions. This class gives you access to gem levels really early on. Next, they give you crystalline potential, which is plus 10% quantity to all gems. Now, we don't know what quantity does. Jonathan Rogers in his interviews made it clear that quantity would be something you consider stacking at endgame. But I imagine because they shifted quality, to the endgame, each quality modifier you get on your gem is going to be that much more important. They were messing a lot with interesting quality modifiers ever since they started bringing in heist and having the alternate quality gems and stuff like that. So I imagine quality is going to be a lot more interesting than just simple things like increased damage or, increased duration and things like that. I think quality might very well change functionalities of gems. I think that if they go and they keep the alternate qualities or different quality types, I think that quality might be very interesting for certain gems. And I think that getting your quality up there might be very important. I could be wrong. Number 3, we have 30% less cost of skills. Skill gems have 30% more attribute requirement. Not too important. The mana cost is going to be a big deal. I wouldn't go up this path here. If you're doing something else, you could consider it, but I think for minions, because I most likely will be using permanent minions, I don't think it's going to matter, because they're going to be reserving spirit and I'm not going to be resummoning them. I don't think it costs mana to resummon them when they die, so I don't think this is important. Number 4 is grant 3 additional skill slots. That's interesting. I'm not sure how important this is, but it is very interesting to me when I see it. Also, we have access to number 5, which is you can use 2 additional copies of the same support gem in different skills. These 2 are very important just in the sense that you can only get 1 support gem per character. The idea is if you only have access to 1 support gem, then you would have more varied builds because you have to use more supports in your build. And if you have access to all the same supports, people generally just take whatever gives the most damage. And that's what we got in that situation in PoE 1, where everyone was pretty much just hyper focused on no utility, no defenses. The only defense you need is a stronger offense, and everyone went all in on just having the strongest offense they could get. And I think it's a good change that they did, where they made it so that you have a limited number of support gems per character, which is what makes this skill itself, gem set it, very strong, is because it gives you the ability to copy one of them. After that, we have thaumaturgical infusion, which is plus 1% maximum cold resistance per 4 blues. Per 4 blue support gems socketed, +1, and then it goes so on and so forth. So per 4 blue, per 4 red, per 4 green. This one here is all right. It takes too much finagling to make it work, and I think at best you're going to get maybe +2%, maybe plus 1 to all, right? I think that's the best you're going to do, is either +1 to all or +3% to one, or +2% to one and 1% to another, things like that. I don't see any much more than that coming out of this. So it's okay, but it's hard for me to go like I'm going to go out of my way to get that, right? 7 and 8 are interesting. You have adaptive capability. Attribute requirements of the gems can be satisfied by your highest attribute, and then enhanced effectiveness. Inherent bonuses from intelligence, strength, and dexterity are doubled. I don't really care too much about number 8, but adaptive capability is something that, because of where Gem Engineer might possibly start in the Atlas, you might have to consider this one, just so that you'll be able to use your gems regardless of where you are in the Atlas, because You might get to your minion gems and it might require 150 intelligence, and you're just so deep in dex that you never get it, but you could easily get that much in dex, right? So the ability to just decide that you only need to focus on one attribute is massive. So if I were to do this class, it'd be obvious to me. I would go 1 and then 2, and then I would go to 4, and then either, depending on what I'm doing with supports, I would either go to 5 to get the additional copies of the supports, or I would go to 7. And that's all going to be based on once I start playing the game and seeing, do I need 2 copies of a support gem, or am I having trouble fielding these attribute requirements? Because this is a new game. I have no clue how hard it's going to be to fix my attributes, and I have no clue how accessible it's going to be to get gear in place to get your attributes fixed. And I also have no idea which minion I'm using, so I don't even know I need 2 of them, or which supports they need, or how I would make this build I'm currently thinking of doing work, right? And because everything is new, the only thing I can move with is keeping myself flexible, right? Next up is the Infernalist, and the Infernalist is interesting to me, but not as I want to play this class. I just don't want to play as a minion class. I know that it's the obvious is like, yeah, it's a minion class, blah, blah, blah. But the minion is the least interesting part of this class to me, right? But we'll go through it. We'll talk about it. One, I'll say this. I don't think Witch is a beginner class. I think both of the Witch ascendancies are very complicated for new players. I mean, new to Path of Exile in general. I wouldn't recommend either ascendancy to new players just because it deals with concepts that are very difficult to wrap your head around the first time you start playing Path of Exile. And it starts off right at the gate with number 1 being Altered Flesh. And what this is doing is it's converting cold damage to fire damage, lightning damage to fire damage, and physical damage to chaos. Which means in order to survive, this is a defensive layer that's fairly strong. But in order to survive using this defensive layer, you need to start overcapping fire resist and chaos resist. Now, I'm not sure how they addressed it in PoE 2, but capping your chaos resist was something that was rather difficult and rather expensive, and overcapping it was also rather difficult. So this is a node that if you take it, you have to go in there with the intention of knowing that your primary defensive layer is going to include overcapped fire resistance as well as overcapped chaos resistance on top of if you do mind over matter or whatever else you decide to do as a defensive layer. Next, we move on to Baydot's Gaze, Baydot's Will, and Baydot's Hand, which is reserving 25% of your life in exchange for +1 mana per 6 life, +1 energy shield per 8 life, 1 spirit for 25 life. And this is very strong. People look at this and think, you know what, you can reserve so many minions with this. This is another advanced concept. Reserving your life is an advanced concept in this game because you're reserving your life pool. That's also your lifeline, right? So you have to figure out how you're going to navigate this, and it could be as easy as stacking more health, but remember this, they've taken health off the tree. It's very rare to get, so it's going to be very important to pay attention to the life rolls on your gear, because if you're not keeping up with your life rolls on your gear and you have this in at, let's say, your second point of ascendancies around like level 50, 55, you're going to be struggling. You're going to get slapped around. You're going to be wondering what's going on because you're going to be starting the game off and doing every encounter with a chunk of your life missing. But it's an advanced concept. Like, you can overcome it. It's just not something I would level with. Anyway, next on the tree, we're going to go to number 5, which is Demonic Possession, which is the big reveal, the demon form, the Lilith form. That looks very good. It's a very interesting thing. I like the shapeshifts. I think it's a cool concept. Demon form, shapeshift into a demon, vastly boosting the power of your spells. You gain Dragon Flame every second you remain in a demon form, causing your life to be lost at an ever-increasing rate. Revert to human form if you reach 1 life. Use a skill that isn't a spell, or reactivate the skill. So this form means you only can use spells. You can't use any attack skills, otherwise you immediately lose the form. You're always losing life. And if you attach the skill again, you'll cancel it. So in this form here, your first level of defense is figuring out your life regen situation to deal with the drain that's going to be happening from demon form. And we're not sure if you can deal with the drain that's coming from this, right? Is it fire damage? It most likely is. That is why this Altered Flesh is there, to kind of encourage you to build on overcapping your fire resistance. So this demon flame is most likely doing fire damage to you, but we're not sure yet. We don't know, right? It's not written here anywhere, but that's the guess I'm making because of Altered Flesh. Next, number 6 is just gain Master Darkness, which is just gain maximum demon flame, which is just giving you more time before the cap of Demon Flame starts burning your life out and causes you to have to reset, right? So this whole form, the goal is you need a lot of life regen and life recovery. So if you can't negate the damage that's being done from being in the form, you want to be able to get your life back to full fast so you can get back in that form. So you're trying to increase your duration of this form, and how you're going to do that is by increasing your life regen or your life recovery or whatever life drain or whatever else you can do to kind of keep it so that you're getting life back while you're in this form, so you can maintain it as long as you can. It's gonna be difficult to maintain. I like this form itself is a whole book of theory crafting to navigate. Next, you have another intricate mechanic here, which is Pyromaniac's Pact. Pyromantic Pact. Maximum mana is replaced by maximum Infernal Flame. Gain Infernal Flame instead of spending mana for skill cost. Take maximum life energy shield as fire damage when Infernal Flame reaches maximum. Lose all Infernal Flame on reaching maximum Infernal Flame. 10% Infernal Flame lost per second if none was gained in the past 2 seconds. This is basically a rage mechanic. Like if you think World of Warcraft, you have to keep attacking. As you attack, your Infernal Flame builds up. You start off with, why would you want to take this? Because when you take this, because this is 2 points in and of itself. Gain Infernal Flame, so this changes how you spend mana, changes how you play the game, changes how you deal with expending your power, and then it's all negatives. It's an odd thing for a first, because you have to take this. This is your first 2-pointer. So your first 2-pointer here at Infernal Flames, you come down here, you drop 2 points here and unlock Infernal Flame, and now you get your mana replaced by this Infernal Flame meter, and that's it. There's not a single positive thing in this node besides that. This is literally a neutral to a negative node. You gain maximum mana replaced as Infernal Flame. You gain Infernal Flame instead of spending your mana for skill cost. Take maximum life and energy shield as fire damage when Infernal Flame reaches maximum. Lose all Infernal Flame upon reaching maximum Infernal Flame. 10% Infernal Flame lost per second if none was gained in the past 2 seconds. There's not a single positive thing written on this node here, and it's the gatekeeper to the other nodes you require. So when you look at this, it's like you have to decide, like, when would you even build this? You would only take this as your last two ascendancy points, because of the fact that there's not a single thing you can do with this until you get one of these. It's a weird node design. It's if I were a betting man, which I'm not, I don't gamble, but if I was, when this beta ends, this skill will not be the same as it is right now at launch. I promise you this will change, because in its current state, it's awful. But we'll go on to what it's supposed to trigger. Bringer Flame, which is while not on low Infernal Flame, all damage you and your allies in your presence contribute to your ignite chance and magnitude. This is what this thing is for. So low Infernal Flame is above 30%. It's 30%, right? So while not on low means while you're above 30%. So while you're above 30%, all your damage from you and your allies will contribute to ignite chance and magnitude. I don't know how that splits, because ignite chance is your chance to ignite. We don't know what determines that. And then magnitude is the amount of damage you need to do to get to your maximum ignite, because ignite has 2 things you're worried about, right? Because it's ignite chance, and then the damage of the hit determines the damage over time the ignite's going to do. So magnitude is going to increase the damage. Well, it's going to act as though you're doing more damage than you actually are to get you to your maximum ignite damage faster, if that makes sense. So this is where number 7 doesn't take shape as a node until you get number 8. Now number 9 is Seething Body. While on high Infernal Flame, you and your allies' presence gain 20% damage as fire damage. Now keep in mind what happens when you hit max Infernal, or I don't know what high is. I believe high most likely will be above 90%. It's not full, because when you hit full, take maximum life and energy shield as fire damage when Infernal Flame reaches maximum. So you're not at max, but you have to be in this sweet spot pendulum location of being above 30%, above I believe 90% or 80%, but not 100%. So you can't just keep casting. This is what I mean. Like this is an advanced concept to keep going, because there's so many things you're gonna have to try to deal with, and you have to figure out a way to deal with the fact that this is a dead ascendancy for at least 4 to 6 points. Because if you want both of these, you just does fuck all for you until you get to Uber Labs. So you get 2 points to go somewhere else, and you do overlap. But the reality is, if you're going to be playing this, it's going to be, you most likely going to take 7, 8, 9, and number 1. Because if I'm right about it being fire damage, it's probably going to be your best bet to funnel all forms of damage you get into fire damage, so you can focus heavily on overcapping your fire resist. All right, so let's continue on. We have Loyal Hellhound at number 10. This is the part where now people believe this is the summoner spec because of this Hellhound. Grants Summon Infernal Hound. 20% of damage from hits is taken from your Hellhound life before you. And it reads to summon a reviving Infernal Hellhound, which ignites enemies near it. The Hound takes a portion of damage from hits from you. In the game right now, they have something similar to Templar tree, and it's Radiant Guardian. It does basically Righteous Fire. It does what this Hellhound is doing, and I think that's why people are gravitating to it. It was very strong for leveling the axe, and eventually it fell off, right? It'll be different this time around because your skills and your ascendancies can be linked, and because you can 6-link in, there's going to be some interesting things you can do with your Infernal Hellhound. It is something you can build around. I don't want to build around this thing. It's this skill alone is why I don't want to play, because I don't want to deal this. I don't want to use this Hound. It's not interesting to me. The same way I never made a build with the Radiant Guardian because it wasn't interesting to me. I understood how strong it was, but I also didn't want to play it. After that, we have Grinning Immolation. Become ignited when you deal a critical hit, taking 50% of your life and energy shield as fire damage per second. So it's more of that needing to figure out how to deal with the amount of fire damage you're taking. Warbringer looks like fun. I like basically the new chieftain, right? So let's go through and look at these skills. We got number 1 is Anvil's Weight, which is break armor equal to 10% of hits damage. Let's look at Anvil's Weight. Break armor equal to 10% of the hit damage dealt, which means all of your skills will always do armor damage. This is fantastic. It doesn't apply to your minions, which is unfortunate, but this is still a fantastic skill. I like it. Number 2 is you can break enemy armor to below 0. Don't know how significant that is, but it's basically a form of armor penetration. We don't know how big a deal it is to go below 0. We don't know how much damage that's going to add because it doesn't tell you at all. And this is something that we're not going to figure out until Path of Building hits, because I guarantee you this is not going to be in game. There's going to be no UI tooltip telling you how much of an increased damage you're going to be doing when their armor is below 0. Everyone's going to be speculating what that means. They might use some formula based on what PoE 1 did, but we have no idea how significant it is to go below 0. But they think it's significant enough that it requires a 4-point investment in ascendancy. So that's all you can really go off of, is they think. So that's all you can really go off, is that they think it's strong. Whether or not it actually is strong, we'll have to wait and see. Number 3 is Jade Heritage. Encase yourself in Jade. Gain a stack of Jade every second. I like Jade Heritage. It looks pretty cool as an old shit skill. Let's read it real quick. Consumes all stacks of Jade to grant a buff for a duration that absorbs all damage from hits up to a maximum based on the amount of Jade consumed. All encased, you cannot move or perform actions. Now, this is a cool skill, but it's not a guaranteed survive the bullshit skill. So we don't know how much it's going to heal, what that ratio is based off of, besides the fact that we know that it needs stacks of Jade, but we don't know how much each singular point of Jade equates to in terms of health. So we don't know if this is going to allow you to stand in a slam from a boss or not. We just know that it is designed to use it and take a hit, but we don't know what causes this thing to scale up higher. And we also know that it's a skill, it's a spell, which means you have to support it in order to make it get to that point. So what supports are you able to drop into this thing? We don't know yet. Number 4, Answered Call. Grants Ancestral Spirits. Trigger ancestral spirits when you summon a totem. Each of your totems will summon an ancestral spirit minion to fight for you. If the totem that's summoned the minion dies, then the ancestral spirit will too. This is interesting to me. So this is summoning a specific minion, and this might be the build I'm looking for. However, I would not be. Next, we have Wooden Wall. 20% of damage from hits taken. 20% of the damage from hits is taken from your nearest totem life before you. This passive was in PoE 1. It's basically a defensive layer. This is similar to the dog, the Hellhound. This is the exact same thing, except your totems function as it, and it's kind of stronger because you can, as long as you're paying attention to your totem life and you're building your totems defensively enough, you can use your totems to offset incoming damage. Number 6, Renly's training, gain 40% of base chance to block from equipped shield instead of shield value. So this flat out replaces your shield block chance. So not every shield has the same block chance, but what it does is it makes everything 40%, which means it's good to allow you to use smaller shields. I don't know the significance of that. I don't know if a smaller shield has any kind of importance or not, but it allows you to use, if you find like, I guess, a unique shield or something like that that has a lower block chance, it allows you to bring it to 40% chance. But it also sounds like it'll lower the block chance of anything that's better than 40% also. I could be reading that wrong because it just says gain. So so most likely it's just going to give you 40% as a minimum of whatever shield you get. And if it's higher than that, then it'll be higher than that. But I guess any shield you put on will have a minimum of 40%. I think that's what it's going for. I don't think I need to overanalyze it any further than that. Then we have Turtle Charm at number 7, 35% less chance to block. Can block damage from all hits while shield is not raised. Now, this is pretty good. I know you have to manually block in this game now when you have the shield up to guard. This means you go back to having the old style of block where you can block all incoming hits. That less is very strong in terms of as a negative debuff, and it's very hard to overcome. It's a multiplier, right? So it's gonna be very hard to overcome the reduced block that this is giving you, and you'll have to invest heavily in block to make this useful. And I think even then, if I were to guess, the highest block you'd get after that is like, you wouldn't get the cap, but you'd probably get to like 30-40% chance to block at all times without having to worry about, you know, specifically trying to block. It could be good. It's just going to take a lot to get you there. But what this could be good for are any on block skills, right? Anything that triggers off on block, this can be good for that because you're able to block without having to raise your shield. That means every now and then it might trigger that, and you might be able to do something with that. Something to think about. Then 8 and 9 are about war cries. War call with bellow. Corpses in your presence explode when you war cry, dealing 25% of their life as physical damage. This was a skill gem in PoE 1. And then Great Wolf's Howl, ignore war cry cooldown, also a skill in PoE 1. Now, if I were to take this tree on and play it for my summoner, I would most likely go to 4. I would also go to 5, and I would go 8 and 9. I would do totems and war cries. Easy, right? I like AJ, I like Encased in Jade, but I don't need, I would probably alternate between I would try totems out, and if I don't like it in terms of the totem defense, I would go to Encased in Jade, right? But that's the goal there. This is easy for me. Like, I don't 6 and 7, no. 1 and 2, not with this class. That's not what I'm trying to do. That's it. So if I were going to do a melee a build myself while I'm attacking, I would do 2, and then I would do 9, right? Because I think that the war cries and a melee skill are interesting, but 6 and 7 are a bad defensive layer. Now for the final unorthodox one, which I guess not unorthodox. The final class I'm looking at that I might play for minion is the Invoker, the Monk Invoker. And that's mainly because of the first two, which is Lead Me Through Grace, gain 1 spirit for every 6 energy shield equipped on the body armor, gain 1 spirit for every 15 evasion on body armor, cannot gain spirit from equipment. So I might consider this depending on how high a spirit you can get from body armor and how high a spirit you can get from energy shield, because this value must be high if they believe this should offset needing a scepter, right? Because scepters have a spirit on them. You would have to go out of your way to put something else in that slot because it says you cannot get spirit from equipment. So you would not be able to benefit from any increased spirit, but you would have to rely on the fact that whatever spirit this is going to give you would be enough for whatever minions you're trying to maintain. And also keep in mind that temporary minions don't need spirit, right? Now, and Protect Me from Harm is the second part of it, which evasion rating also grants physical damage reduction, 40% less evasion rating. So you can stack energy shield and evasion, but be an armor tank, right? So it could be interesting. Not an armor tank, but still do a physical damage tank, right? It could be interesting. Now, next you have Meditate, which is channel to recharge energy shield, can overcharge your energy shield up to a double its normal maximum. Channeling ends when you take damage or your energy shield is doubled its maximum. This skill cannot be used if your energy shield is already double the normal maximum and you have no maximum energy shield. This is a skill that you would most likely use at the beginning of the map and beginning of boss fights, and anytime your energy shield goes to 0, right? I don't think like I think early on it might be tedious, but I think you get to a point where you will usually cast this once every other map, and that's all you're relying on, right? Because I think that you'll get to a point where you're relying on dodging so much, but then if you do get hit, you have this massive energy shield pool. Like you get to like 6,000-7,000 energy shield, and you have this pump you up to 14,000. I think it's pretty cool. I think it's a cool idea. Number 4 is I Am the Blizzard. Gain 10% of damage as extra cold damage on freezing enemies. Chill the ground is created. And I Am the Thunder. Gain 10% of damage as extra lightning damage. 25% chance to shock enemies. To shock enemies. I Am the Thunder. Gain 10% of damage as extra lightning damage. 25% chance on shocking enemies to create shocked ground. And then you have the Avatar state here, which is an I Shall Rage. Grants Unbound Avatar. Gain Unbound Fury by inflicting elemental status with hits on enemies. Once you reach maximum Unbound Fury, consume it to become unbound for a duration, vastly augmenting your elemental prowess. Meta skills gain 35% more energy. Critical hits ignore negative enemy monsters. Critical hits ignore non-negative enemy monster elemental resistances. So this just brings them to 0. You can't go below 0. And scatter them to the winds. Grants elemental expression. Triggers elemental expression on melee critical hit. Creates a fire explosion, an arcing bolt of lightning, or an icy wave of projectiles. The chance for explosion is proportional to your strength, for a bolt proportional to your dexterity, and for a wave proportional to your intelligence. This is an entire build on its own. Number 9. It's a different thing. It's interesting, very interesting to me, but it is something that is in and of itself a build. So what I would do with this is I would go for number 1, of course, for the spirit stacking, and consider number 2 for a defensive layer if I need it. These wouldn't be first. I'm just saying the skills I would look at, and then I would do some sort of elemental build, and where I would be using the catalyst to trigger these elementals. So either I would go 5, which is giving me I Am the Thunder, so I can trigger shocks for myself, and then 6, which is giving me the element form, the Unbound Avatar, or I would go 4 and 6, right? Now 2 is interchangeable with 3, so if I decide that I want to stack on the energy shield, I can go that direction. When I decide I want to stack on the armor, the physical damage reduction, and energy shield, I can go this way, right? And the only reason I'm considering this is because I plan on fighting alongside my minions. I would use my minions as some kind of support role if I can fulfill that role with them. So this is one where I think I can make it work. I just have to know more about the minion gems on offer and what I can use them to do, because there's no gem levels here, there's no quantity here. So a lot of the power that I'm getting from them would be from how I roll specific scepters, where I'd have to roll it for minion level, but not have spirit on them, just so I don't have a dead stat, and to see if that's even possible, right? So this is one I'm considering, but it's one that I don't think I can leave start with it, just because it might be more difficult to pull off. But I think I can pull it off. So at this time now, I'm leaning heavily towards starting as a Gemling Legionnaire, and if that doesn't work out, which I can't imagine not working out, then I'll change over to the Warbringer. But reality is, the Warbringer is probably my second class that I make, just to try out the ancestral spirits. But my story playthrough is going to be as a Gemling Legionnaire minion build, and we're gonna just see how that plays out. I'm gonna see if I can pull off the melee minion caster if I can, and if I can, I'll just do a traditional skeleton archer build, or I mean a skeleton warrior build. But that's the goal I'm looking for with this class here. I'm quite confident I can pull it off. I think it's gonna be a lot of fun. I'm not going to go through and look at any league skills and stuff like that and try to put together skills that I currently don't think, and try to put together skills that I'm not sure are going to be in that state when the game launches. I don't want to do that. I want to get in game, log in, and see things unfold as I see them in the shops. I am going to be doing guides on how to do a blind playthrough in terms of like how to properly plan a build out without knowing all the ins and outs, and not having path of building, and not knowing all the hurdles that you need to overcome. And I think that if you're watching my videos and you're playing like I am, where you're just a fresh player who's never played PoE before, or you're coming from Diablo 4, or you tried and you had trouble actually overcoming it, and you don't want to be, you know, tethered to guides for the rest of your PoE career, I think this can help. Because the way I plan on doing this means if you are intuitive enough and you follow my guides and I explain it well enough, you will be able to do this on your own and figure out how to do your own builds going forward. As you can see here, like I'm not doing anything that's crazy. I'm understanding the outlines I need to color within, and I'm going to try to draw within those lines. And then you're going to see me do this build, and as hurdles come up, I'm going to explain to you how I plan on making adjustments for them. I very rarely break a character to the point where it's like, I'm just going to delete this character and throw it out. If I have to, I will adjust skill gems on the fly and make those changes. If I have to, I will, you know, respec. But I very rarely say, you know what, this whole concept doesn't work. I am very confident I will be able to make it end game with this class, and hopefully you guys want to join me on that journey. So that's gonna be it for today. I appreciate you guys as always for dropping by and giving me your time. Have yourselves a good morning. And if this is the only video you watch me today, good afternoon or good night.